Hello and welcome to the Hometown Church Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I have a very special guest, Pastor Joel Fredricks. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Sweet. It's exciting to have you on the podcast. It's the first time we've had a sit-down conversation on the podcast. Yep. You were here for the 40 days, but that was a little bit different. This is kind of the first time we get to sit down and interact like this.
I feel special.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and making it work.
Yeah, for sure.
But we have been going through the book of Revelation as a church for about 4 weeks now. We're about halfway through this first series in the book of Revelation. We're going to be going through Revelation for the next 3 years with an 8-week series each summer. And so this first summer, we're doing chapters 1 through 3, which is the 7 letters to the 7 churches. And so with the podcast, we've been kind of taking the opportunity to have each of the teachers come on and do a little bit more of a deep dive on their passage, because Revelation is just so dense, right? There is just a ton of stuff going on in Revelation. There's a lot of symbolism and imagery that's being used, and it's hard to cover all that in a 35-minute sermon, right? So having this opportunity to kind of sit down and go through each of these has been a huge blessing to me. I've been really enjoying the conversations. But yeah, this week we're talking about your section that you covered last Sunday on the Sunday sermon, which was the letter to the church in Smyrna. So that's Revelation chapter 2, verses 8 through 11. So only 4 verses, but managed to get a whole sermon out of it. And we're going to have a whole conversation surrounding it now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we'll start by just reading through the passage, and I'll read it aloud here, and then we'll start to break it down and talk about it. This is Revelation chapter 2, verses 8 through 11. Write to the angel of the church in Smyrna. Thus says the first and the last, the one who was dead and came to life. I know your affliction and poverty, but you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews, but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Don't be afraid of what you are about to suffer. Look, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison to test you, and you will experience affliction for 10 days. Be faithful to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. Let anyone who has ears to hear listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will never be harmed by the second death. All right. So short little passage, but a lot in there. Tell us a little bit about the context of this passage. You know, like what's going on. What do we know about the church in Smyrna? Yeah,
I mean, all 7 churches, had to endure persecution and suffering. But I think Smyrna was a unique situation because of the how fiercely loyal they were to Rome, and it's present day Izmir, Turkey. So there was like this. They were considered like the ornament of Asia. We're like going into Asia. There was this port city, and they really represented Rome to the east, and so yeah, like I think it. Because of that devotion and that passion that they had for Rome, it really put the Church of Smyrna in kind of the situations that they were in. So kind of put them in difficulty because, they weren't going to bow the knee to the Emperor Caesar. So, because of that, they were considered traitors or against the government, against the authority that was at that time. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, one thing I thought was fascinating in looking at these churches, like last week we talked about Ephesus, right? And there's a lot written about Ephesus, right? We have a whole book of the New Testament called the Letter to the Ephesians, right? That is directly talked about, and it talks about the history of Ephesus in the book of Acts. But Smyrna, there's not really anything, right? One thing I found that was really interesting was not the history of Smyrna, but what happened after this.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
With Polycarp.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know much about that?
Definitely. Yes. I definitely got into that. Yeah. It's interesting because he's considered like a pupil of John, the writer of Revelation. And so the fact that he then was alive when the letter was written, probably in his 20s. And then by the end of his life, after being bishop or pastor, whatever you want to call it, of the church of Smyrna, to then be faced with death, basically, the very thing that it's saying, like, if you're faithful unto death. And Polycarp had to face that same decision. And he stood up for Christ and he says, I will not, Christ has never failed me. So how can I disown him now? So, or something like that. So Definitely read about that. Was so encouraged by his faith, and just realizing that this was an ongoing struggle. It wasn't just the persecution that they faced at the time that John wrote, but it continued for decades and decades because of their devotion to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and his story really became like an inspiration point and a turning point in the persecution of the church.
Yeah,
because he was so old when when he was martyred, right? Like the Roman citizens started to kind of turn on the government of like, we're not really about this, like killing old people because of their religion, right?
Yeah.
And so it started to turn this tide, but it was a testament to what faithfulness can do, not just in a person's life and their afterlife, but how it can change the world as a result.
So true.
So cool how we can see through history the effects that this letter had on people and how the world changed because of it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So one thing that I've been really interested in with each of these letters, and that I'll be asking each of the teachers is the different titles that are given to Jesus. We get the whole list in chapter 1 with John's vision of Jesus, and then each little section will be like added onto for each of the specific churches. So for last week, it was he was described as the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and who walks among the lampstands. So we talked about how does that relate to what's going on with the church in Ephesus. This week, Jesus gets described as the first and the last, the one who died and is alive. So how does that description of Jesus tie into what's going on with the church in Smyrna?
Yeah, I can't think of a better way for Jesus to identify himself. The first and the last is taken from the book of Isaiah in multiple places. God is described as the first and the last. He's like this sovereign king. And here they are in a kingdom where the ruling authorities are so harsh onto them. And so for Jesus to say, I'm the first and the last, he's basically saying, Caesar, came after me and he's going to leave way before me. I am the first, I'm the past, the present, and the future. And there's no rule that you're enduring that is going to supersede mine. And I'm going to continue to rule. And I've been ruling. And so I think that is so encouraging. That would be so encouraging. And I think it was to the believers there that were facing, all they knew was like this horrible ruling power that was over them. So I think it was really pertinent to what they were going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like the hope that it gives too of like, you will face death, but the person that you're serving already died and is alive, right? Like that's not something that you need to worry about when you're serving Jesus.
Yeah. And I love that, like, Jesus faced the same adversaries, like of like the Roman rule, and he faced the instigators, the Jewish instigators that were trying to get him to be killed. And now this church is facing the same enemies, and Jesus kind of showed the path of like, I have had victory over them, and you will too, as long as you remain faithful and you conquer just like I've conquered. But so I think it was like just the perfect way for him to identify himself to these people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little into the passage, we get this really interesting verse in verse 9. He says, "I know your affliction and your poverty, but you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan." And you touched on this a little bit in your sermon, but I thought that was just like a really interesting phrase, and I wasn't really sure how to take it or what it fully meant. But what does it mean for the Jews to be of the synagogue of Satan?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think Satan means adversary or accuser. And so I think there's like this element of, you're a synagogue, meaning a community of people that are doing works that are opposed to what I'm doing. And I think it's interesting that Jesus, I think it's in John 8:44, where he speaks to the Pharisees and says that for you are the children of your father, the devil, because you love to do the works of that he does. And so I think there's like a very compatible scenario here where even though these people say they're of God and they say they're of me, they actually are doing the works that are against me. And so look at their works, and their works are of Satan. They're of the accuser. They're of the work that is against my kingdom. And so I think that's when it says the synagogue of Satan. It's not all Jewish people. It's a select group of people that are doing this thing that's causing the suffering of the church.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I thought it was interesting. The wording there, because I think it can be interpreted in two different ways, right? The people who call themselves Jews but are not, right? Well, that could mean that this was a group of people who are not ethnically Jewish, right? But are saying they are, and actually are in opposition to what's going on.
Yeah.
Or this could be people who are ethnically Jewish, but internally they have not submitted themselves to God and are not following God. And I think the second interpretation is the one that I kind of,
that's the one
I start to lean
into.
towards, right? And my mind went to the exact same place of John 8, where he's having this conversation. He's saying like, your father is the devil, right? Yeah. Which would be like, for a Jewish person, you're thinking, like, what do you mean? Like,
exactly.
We're children of Abraham. Like, our father is God. Like, we follow him, right?
It was such an astonishing thing for him to say, because like that, they're literally like, how could you call the people of God the people of the devil? I mean, can you imagine? They picked up stones to stone Jesus at that point, like, because they were so taken aback by how ridiculous that probably felt to them.
Yeah.
But it was true.
It was true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Jesus said it. It's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that just kind of ties into the idea that, like, to be a child of God, to be among God's people, is not something that's inherited, right? It's a result of actions and decisions and behaviors, right? Of what is your life actually submitted to, and who are you actually following? Because that's going to determine who you belong to, right? Not where you were born or what, where you were born or anything like that. It is, and I think, people in the church, you can grow up in the church your whole life and be culturally Christian.
Yeah.
But if you're not submitted to God, if you have not given your life over to him, then you're just of the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a little later on, we get some of the consequences of their actions, and consequences kind of sounds negative, but there's a positive and a negative consequence, right? And Mike did a really good job of kind of outlining the kind of the pattern that each of these letters follow. And then some of these letters kind of break the pattern a little bit too, right? I thought this one was interesting because this one breaks the pattern of not having anything that they're really
no correction.
There's no correction offered to them. He's just like, hey, you guys are doing great. There's persecution coming, by the way, so like be ready for that. But of the consequences he gives them, he says the reward for conquering, for holding to the faith, is to receive the crown of life, and to not be harmed by the second death. So what is the significance of those two things?
Yeah, the crown of life, that's like, if you look at the original language, it's like the wreath that the athlete wins for winning the race, the reward of victory. But I think, the crown of life literally means, I think that the next verse 11, kind of gets at it even more, that it is eternal life. I mean, it is having life forever, free from suffering with our God, which I can't even, when I even think about the rewards of heaven, like for doing good, it's like hard to imagine anything more than that, because that seems like all there could possibly be. But yeah, the crown of life is eternal life with our Father forever. Mm-hmm. And then the second question you said was, what is the lake of fire? Is that what you asked?
Well, the second death.
The second death. Sorry. The second death. Yeah, the second death is the punishment of hell. It's referenced later in Revelation, where it's talk about a lake of fire and these things where it's truly like the punishment that is awaiting when Jesus returns, and we will not be harmed by that, because we have endured this first death that's been to ourselves and to maybe what we hoped this life would be, but now we will not be harmed by the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, later on in Revelation, I think it's in 19, it just says the lake of fire is the second death.
Yeah.
Right. So it directly identifies it, like that is what the second death is. Yeah, I thought these two images were really interesting. The image of like a crown is something that comes up consistently through the New Testament. James writes about. He says, where was it? James says, "Yeah, blessed is the one who endures trials, because when he stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to him." And Paul, you talked about like the wreath and the reward for going through all of this, of being given a crown that is not perishable, is imperishable, right? That is going to last forever. There's a couple other places. Paul also calls it a crown of righteousness in Second Timothy, and Peter calls it a crown of glory. So there's kind of all these different titles and attributes ascribed to this crown, but it all kind of ties back into the Old Testament of this idea of royalty, right?
Yeah.
Of human beings being kind of the royal, priestly, image bearers of God, ruling alongside Christ. And so this idea that we're given a crown is like a symbol of authority as well. That we're kind of
an honor.
Yeah, it's an honor. And so we're kind of re-elevated into this position with God and with Christ ruling over the earth again. So it's not just like a medal, right? Like, hey, you did a good job.
Yeah.
It's like, no, actually there's something that comes along with this. There's a title and a position that comes along with this, and that's going to be, dispersed and given out at the end of days. And so we'll still have a job, which is exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
It's not just sitting up in the clouds,
Yeah.
singing songs.
Right. Yeah. And then the second death too, I think, is just an interesting description of it, right? I think death is just something that is a scary idea for people. And so, well, and directly what he's talking about here in this passage is like, you might die. Like, there is persecution coming. You might die. And there's plenty of Christians who did die and have died and will die for their faith. But that's not the scary thing, right? Like, that is not something that needs to be feared. Everyone dies. In fact, you have to go through death.
Do not fear the one that can kill the body. But can destroy the soul. Like, that's the true scary thought.
Right.
Is the second death, and not getting through that one.
Right. Yeah, because that one's final. That one's like, there's
eternal.
There's no other option there. So I think that kind of ties in, and I think we'll talk about this later as we get deeper into Revelation, because I think there's two different paths of like, what does the second death mean? What does that eternal judgment mean? There's kind of the like the everlasting torment view, and then there's like the annihilation view, and the everlasting torment view is definitely the majority view. Like, second death kind of evokes that image of like just annihilation. There's just an end to it, and there's lots of views that go on both sides. I think, I don't know if you've thought about that, or if you've given that much thought.
I think both are bad. They're both very terrible to think about, but it's not good. The end for those that do not trust in Christ. So, whatever it is, not something you want. You want to avoid it if you can. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about biblical suffering and in the modern day. So I think there can be kind of this disconnect, or we can put persecution on and put it onto things that maybe it doesn't really apply to. Where we can kind of have a victim mindset as Christians, like, oh, it's a little uncomfortable for me to share my faith at work, so I'm being persecuted in this situation. So like, what's the difference between biblical suffering and modern discomfort?
Yeah. When I was preparing for my message, I read somewhere in some study that in America, 60% of Christians believe they're persecuted on an ongoing basis. And I was like, I kind of scoffed at it. Like, yeah, right. Like, so the perception of what is persecution and what is not, I think for the Church of Smyrna, like, persecution is identifying in allegiance with Christ, and not putting you at odds with the ruling authorities that cost you economically, your freedom, or your very life. And so the persecution was very, very costly. But in my message, I try to get at, like, there's still a cost of just following Christ in a broken, fallen world. And so, it's interesting. I know that there's a distinction. Obviously, there's two different things that are very unique. And there's verses like, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. Like, if they persecuted me, they'll persecute you, Jesus said. So there's things that are promised to us. And I think the more that we stand out in our allegiance to Christ, even in America, I think that there will be slight persecution that comes. I think because the world doesn't like Jesus, it's against him. And so I think that will come. I don't know if in America we'll face what the Church of Smyrna faced or others around the world face. But I still think like the call is to be faithful and endure through it, whether it's a modern discomfort or something that, I think of sickness. I mean, like if I'm going through something difficult in my life like that, that has nothing to do with persecution, but that still requires me to not abandon God, to trust that he's ruling over it and to know that he's going to redeem it. And so all those things like still apply. And so I kind of took that as like, yes, they're different, but the call is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the call either way is to lay down your life and to move forward, right? But when I think of like modern discomfort and like what that is, I think it's a lot of times it's just like inconvenient barriers or things that make it, that'd be nice to have, but it's not necessarily like essential in life,
Yeah.
And like a lot of times we can just use those as excuses,
like first world problems.
Yeah, first world problems.
Okay.
Like, oh, I can't find time in my day to read my Bible.
I'm too busy because
I'm too busy because I got all these things. Or like my friends made fun of me a little bit because I talked about Jesus, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, well, let's look at what was happening with Smyrna and with the rest of the 7 churches. Like things got bad there.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a level of rejoicing and thankfulness and gratitude that we should have to live in a time where we're and a place, right? Because there is places where this is going on.
Yeah.
Where we can just sit back and thank God and be like, wow, I'm so grateful that I can go to church on Sunday and not have to look over my shoulder about what's going to happen next, right?
That's true. That's a good perspective. I mean, I took it more as like the verse, like in this world don't be surprised that you'll face trials of various kinds. Like, and so like, no matter who you are, this life is difficult. And so there is like even if you're not facing what these people face, you're still having to endure in the sense of like, I need to continue to rely on God and not myself and turn to him in even the small things that are just inconvenient, but make life hard. But I think there is like the other side of it's like, we should be very grateful that we don't have to face these tragic things and choices that some of our brothers and sisters around the world are facing right now.
Yeah.
So.
And I think in a lot of ways it becomes then an opportunity, right? It's not like it's not an inconvenience to go share your faith. Now it's like we have so much opportunity to do that and freedom to do that. And so like the excuses we come up with for it being, a little uncomfortable and awkward to go ask someone how to pray for them, it's just like, that is such a small thing, when you put it in that perspective, it reshifts how you view evangelism and time with the Lord and every aspect of following God. Right.
Yeah. And my mind is going all places in the Bible. So I'm thinking of like Acts where like they rejoiced after they're flogged because they were considered worthy to share the sufferings of Christ. And it's like their perspective was so different that they would rejoice that they suffered. And you're saying, we should at least rejoice that we don't have to suffer, that we can go and share our faith and not have to face these terrible things that they had to face. So yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about like the benefits of suffering and persecution and what that does to the church. How does persecution strengthen the church?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many scriptures that talk about this. You already brought up James chapter 1. I think like, it says God tests us, and it will produce steadfastness, which will produce maturity so that we're lacking in nothing. Like there's like this, like God's working out all these things for our good, even the things that challenge us. I think of like the Apostle Paul in Corinthians where he's like, we felt like we had the sentence of death on our lives. Like our life was so hard. We wish we were dead. And then he says, so that we would rely on God. Like that was the point of this. And he was able to recognize that, which was also very interesting because I feel like I wouldn't be able to. I would just be like focused on the hardship. But for him, he could see through the pain and see that, that God was doing something that was very redeeming of every trial that we faced. And I think that's so encouraging because I said it in my message, but like it truly means that there's like not a single thing that's hard that that's not just wasted or meaningless or pointless. It's like truly God is using it for something that's good and right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a huge like personal development thing that happens when you go through something hard and then God uses it and you endure through it and God grows you as a result. I think there's also a big communal aspect of it, of going through something hard with people.
Yeah.
Like if you ever done anything hard with someone, in the moment it's like, this is the worst thing ever. But then you come out on the other side and that's the thing you remember. Like, right. That's kind of like the touch point you guys have.
This is why you do marathons.
Yeah. And do it with people. Because now you're doing it as a community.
Suffering.
Yeah. And you're like, man, that was so hard. Yeah. But we did it together and now we're like closer because of it.
For sure.
Like I think of, this is not persecution, but we went to HSLT to Colorado this year and we took coach buses down. And it was 16 hours in a bus full of a bunch of teenage boys.
Suffering.
Yeah.
But not persecution.
Suffering, but not persecution. Modern discomfort, not persecution.
Yeah.
And like, that was such a long, hard trip in this bus.
I can imagine.
And there was a bathroom on the bus, and teenage boys do not have much self-control on using a bathroom on a bus. And so it smelled awful, and we're just stuck, cramped in this tiny little space. But I tell you what, every single person remembers that bus ride.
Oh, yeah.
And there was so much like unity and community that came about because of that. Because now we all have this thing. It's like, man, remember how hard that thing was? But we did it together.
For sure.
And like we came out on the other side. Or like MTOC. Most of those days are so hard.
Yeah, you're like, I don't even know if I can do another day of this. Like I am ready to be done. And it's like Friday.
Yeah, we got like 2 more days of this. How am I going to make it through?
Yeah.
But like you go through that with people. And it's just such a unifying experience where now you're like, you come out on the other side and you're like, now you're my brother.
Oh yeah.
Because
I never feel more close than after MTOC. Like I feel so close to the body of Christ during that time. And right after, just how we've had to endure together. Yeah. For sure.
So I think that's a huge, huge element of it too.
Yeah.
What it does to you personally, but also what it does to a community and bringing people closer together.
I also think about like, have you ever been in a situation where like, you have relational struggles with like some people and like, it's not pleasant, but then like on the other side of it, if you can handle it well and maturely, you feel closer because you were able to like get through this difficulty and you were honest and you got to be kind of work through it. And you just feel like never close. I mean, you just feel close as can be, as a brother because you got through that difficulty. So I think it pertains to that too.
Absolutely. I've had conversations about this with people in like developing relationships and people being kind of hard and not really knowing like what to do or how to communicate with somebody. And there's like some people that you meet and you just get along with them immediately, right? And you're so close. But then there's other people where it's like, man, this person's really tough to get along with. Like it's so hard to figure out how to love this person well. But you give it the time and you give it the effort and you come out the other side. And a lot of times those are the people that you end up being the closest with because you had to put that effort in, because it's way more rewarding.
Or your spouse. That's why you feel close. Yeah. Because you've had to endure a lot of struggles together, but you've clung to each other through it. And so, I mean, if you didn't have the struggle, I don't know if you'd feel the intimacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about persecution today, because there is persecution going on in some places of the world. Where do we see persecution happening in the global church?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the list of countries that are persecuted the most, it's not around here. and like I think of like North Korea, Somalia, Nigeria. It's really humbling. And I think of like North Korea, especially. I think for 24 straight years, they've been like number one on the top persecuted country in the world. And it's not based on deaths or anything like that, but just like the government authoritative rule that requires allegiance to their dictator and to their government. And anyone that veers from that is in serious danger. To just opening a Bible, praying in public, being outed as a Christian could cost you significantly, and not just you, but your whole family. And so what it has caused is like the church to go underground and to be super secretive, where they can't. I mean, you talk about the benefit of being in America, right? They have to hide the most important aspect of their lives 24/7, and share that only with the people that share that faith. And so it's really humbling for me. I'm not often very thoughtful of it or aware of it, that all of this is going on. But when I'm thankful, that's why even this, in the preparation for my message, it like brought all this back to me of just like the suffering that is going on, and that to be praying for them and be thinking about the cost that people are having to pay for their faith.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like thinking about that in terms of like, what would it be like to live your life like that?
Mm-hmm.
And like, cause this idea of spreading the gospel, sharing your faith is something that is like very, very important to the Christian walk.
Oh,
right.
I know.
And so what does it look like to be faithful in that, in a place where if you tell the wrong person, it's going to mean really bad things for you and your family.
Yeah.
Right. It makes me think of the verse from the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, don't throw your pearls before pigs. What is it? Pearls before pigs. Don't give to dogs what is holy, or throw your pearls before pigs.
Yeah.
Maybe it's reversed. But this idea of being selective with who you share with, because there's going to be those who receive it, and there's going to be those who might even attack you because you've shared it. And so it's like that's a weird tension to be in. It is a weird
tension
of having to discern and decipher and like build relationships with people first, so that you can trust them with the most important thing, and love them, right? Like that's how you love them, is you have to take a risk to do that.
Yeah. Well, and the fascinating thing too is that even in the midst of that, the church there is growing significantly. It's like you can't, the more they try to contain, the more that the church just, grows and is strengthened, and is blessed. It's like a fascinating reality that you just can't stop what God is doing with the church. And he will bring his children home no matter what the world says,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful idea of, I mean, that's how the early church started. It was like, it was starting to spread. And as soon as persecution came, it like set ablaze. Yeah. And it just caught and went. And so, what an interesting dynamic there, because every other like movement in history, or like small, like little startup or something like that, if the government came down and like tried to snuff it out, it was done, right? Yeah. But specifically with we saw with Judaism before Christ came around, right? Like they endured a lot of that stuff, and years of persecution and conquerings and exiles and all this stuff, and it just continued to grow and spread because God blessed it, right? And then we see that with the church of, if God's blessing is on it, it will grow, it will go. Like it's the world does not have a say in the growth and spreading of Christianity, because God is over it. Yeah. Yeah.
Amen.
So how should we prepare for suffering to come? If that's something that we're promised as Christians, what does that look like?
Yeah. I thought about this a lot, and I think he who is faithful with little will be entrusted with much. I just think that there's like, we have to receive the cost that we have, even though it might be smaller, but be faithful in that in the small things, I think, every day. I mean, you'll fail, but picking yourself back up and being faithful again. And I think when you do that, when the big things come, then you're more likely to be, you've practiced that relying on God. And so I just think like, man, you have to be able to, like kind of like in my message where I shared about just like, I'm just going to reveal my faith in Christ, even though I know like truly nothing's going to really happen to me. I know that. But I have to be faithful in that small thing so that maybe someday when it does come down to like, this is going to truly cost me, this is going to cause persecution. Like I've already stood for Christ and he showed himself faithful over and over and over again. And he's shown up for me every time. And so now when the big thing comes, I can face it. And it's almost like through those trials, God has shown himself faithful. And now I'm more confident. I'm more willing to endure anything. So I'd say that. But then also just, you mentioned this earlier, like the importance of community. This just popped in my head, just like how vital it is to stand with brothers and sisters with you when facing anything, persecution, hardship, because how much more difficult it is to stand alone. And I think that would make it so much harder.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. I love that, being faithful with the little things, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about like running a marathon, right? Like you don't go out and run a marathon.
Yeah.
You train for it. You do a mile at first, and then you do 2 miles, and you kind of slowly build and grow, and you practice so that you're able to run the marathon. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do to kind of practice, and prepare ourselves. I think a lot of it is being faithful in those small things of reading the Bible, being in community, being in prayer, dealing with sin in your life. That's something that's painful and hard. But if you're faithful in it, you endure and you come out the other side and you're changed because of it.
And dealing with rejection. Like I think of MCOC and like I faced rejection many a times. And so now like when this really serious thing comes along, I can face it because I've faced it before. But if I've never really, exercised that faith muscle, I don't know. Yeah. I think it might be debatable whether I do it.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another one I thought of was fasting. I think fasting is a really good practice for that because it is something that is like physical, right? Where you are physically putting your body through something that it is telling you, this is not good. Like you need food, go get food. But you're putting yourself in this position where you're denying what your body is very loudly telling you need and choosing to rely on God through it anyway. And
so forced reliance. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's a small thing, but it's a practice that you can do that's going to build up that muscle for when something that you don't have control over, you don't have a say in, comes. Yeah. You're like, I can handle this.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, any other thoughts or anything from this passage that you wanted to touch on? I'm just grateful that I get to converse with you and awesome. Grateful for it. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here, for putting together your message and for being willing to come on and talk about it a little bit more with me. It's always a blessing to hear you preach. Really enjoy you speaking, and getting to spend time with you. It's always fun talking with you. For sure. Yeah. So thank you for being here, and thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Next week we're going to be covering the letter to Pergamum. And Pastor Deacon is going to be up, and he's going to be joining the podcast to talk about that. So if you guys have any questions, if there's anything from the letter of Smyrna or anything from the letter to Pergamum that is coming up that you guys really want answers to, you can send those into us at podcast@hometownchurch.com. Otherwise, that's all we got for you. So we'll see you next week. All right. Bye.